Yeah. Oh, there's a little bit of blood. Hello and welcome to another episode of Judge of Character. As always, I'm your host, Steve. As you can see, I've been battling a little bit of an illness. I know, your preconceived notions of my godhood have been shattered, and for that I apologize. But fear not, because I've been working on the show regardless. In fact, tonight's going to be an interesting episode, because tonight, instead of looking at one character, we're going to be looking at two. More specifically, we're actually going to be comparing them to see who is the better one. Well, anyway, tonight's contestants, so to speak, are Gozer the Gozerian and Vigo the Carpathian from Ghostbusters 2. Oh, it's on my hand! When it comes to the Ghostbusters films, the general consensus is that the first film was better, and that's because it is. Mind you, that doesn't mean that the second film is horrible, at least not in general cinematic terms. It's certainly no Plan 9 from outer space. But in comparison to the first film, it's no match. But when people compare the two films, they tend to leave out one big factor. The villain. The first film had Gozer, a god who was worshipped in ancient times and who had been brought back to destroy the world. The second film had Vigo the Carpathian, the ghost of a maniacal tyrant who had taken residence in a portrait of himself and was attempting to revive himself by taking over the body of a baby so he could take over the world. Why a baby? I have no idea. The way I see it, if you're going to resurrect yourself, wouldn't you want to do it as a full-grown human? And besides, could you imagine a baby version of Vigo? I'm okay. I just threw up my mouth a little bit. Anyway, I decided to take a look at these two characters to see which one was the better villain. And that's all. I'm not going to sit here and argue about which movie was better. Quite frankly, there's no conscience there. We all know the first movie was the better one. Anyway, that's all we're going to be doing tonight. We're going to be seeing who's the better villain of the two. Was it Gozer, or was it Vigo? First up, Gozer. Gozer is an ancient godlike entity from another dimension, the subject of worship for a whole cult, and is known as the Destructor. Summoned by a mysterious cult in the 1920s, Gozer appeared in 1984 in New York City. Apparently clocks don't exist where Gozer's from. Next is Vigo. He's the ghost of a fearsome and powerful tyrant from the 16th century who comes back in 1989 to take over the world by taking possession of the body of a baby. No! Oh, not on the carpet. So who wins in the overall Who's Who? This one I'm gonna have to give to Gozer. As scary as Vigo can be, it doesn't change the fact that Gozer is still essentially a demigod. And Vigo was still just the ghost of an ordinary person, so kinda hard to top that. Next up is appearance. This might not seem like a big deal, but appearance counts for a lot these days. Anyway, who looked better? In the case of Gozer, we have an androgynous individual with a flat top and bubble wrap. Bubble wrap? Yeah, Gozer isn't exactly riding the wave of fashion here, but then again, neither is Vigo, who's rocking some nice 16th century armor of some kind there. But then he also has the long hair and piercing eyes, so that's a plus. Then again, Gozer can change its appearance and be whatever it wants to be. So who wins this round? I'm gonna have to go with Vigo on this one. While Gozer can change its appearance, we only ever see two forms. The bubble wrap version and the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. And while Vigo only has one other form, they're both much more terrifying than what Gozer has to offer. Sorry, but a giant marshmallow never scared me quite as much as that face did. Moving on. Next up is minions. No evil villain is truly complete without a henchman or a minion of some kind to do all the dirty work for them. You know, their own personal Igor. So who had the better ones? Gozer had two minions, Vince Clortho, the Keymaster, and Zool, the Gatekeeper. Their job was to facilitate the arrival of Gozer, apparently by mating. Which is pretty obvious, because, I mean, their names were Keymaster and Gatekeeper. They're memorable if for no other reason because of who they possessed. Zool took over Dana Barrett, Peter Venkman's love interest, while Vince took over Louis Tully, Dana's next-door neighbor and not-so-secret admirer. Yeah. What about Vigo? Vigo is at a slight disadvantage here as he only has the one minion, but in truth, that's all he needs. Janos Poha is the curator of the museum in which Dana now works in the second film, which is also where Vigo's painting is stored. Vigo takes control of him and uses him to further his own ends, primarily by kidnapping Oscar, Dana's baby, and Vigo's chosen vessel. So who wins this round? This one's actually a tie. Vince Clortho and Zool are better in the area of comedy and plot, but aren't all that scary. Janos, on the other hand, is fucking creepy. And that's before he gets possessed. After that, there's not much difference to him, except now he has the backing of a powerful ghost. I mean, look at some of his moments! So yeah, this is a tie. Next up is their master plan. Every bad guy has some diabolical plan. So what was theirs? Gozer's is short and sweet. Destroy the world. Not rule it, destroy it. End it. Game over. Vigo, on the other hand, wants to take over the world. Again, by taking over the body of a baby. I'm sorry, I really just can't get over that. A baby? Really? Anyway, when it comes to comparison here, no contest. Gozer wins this one. Having a psychopath from the 16th century ruling the world would be pretty bad, but not existing at all would likely be worse. Some of you might disagree with me, but remember this. They're both shitty options regardless. But, point goes to Gozer. Who has the better presence? Being a villain isn't all about just being evil and all that. You have to have presence. If you don't have presence of any kind in whatever it is you're trying to take over, who's going to take you seriously? So, to that end, who had a bigger presence in their respective film? Gozer may have been the big bad of the first film, but you didn't really know it until about halfway through. Most of the film was spent getting the gang into business and having them deal with run-of-the-mill ghosts. Gozer wasn't played up too much at first. In fact, the early signs of Gozer were more directed at Zool. Up until we learn about what Gozer is exactly, it seems like Zool is the big bad we need to be wary of. Vigo, on the other hand, is there right from the beginning. It's his slime that kicks off everything, and he's introduced as the main bad guy very early on. On top of that, Vigo is more involved than Gozer was, albeit through his minion Janos. Simply put, Vigo has a much more solid presence in the sequel, which makes him much more of an active threat, unlike Gozer, who just kind of shows up. So, point goes to Vigo. And finally, who has more frightening moments? Naturally, when your trade involves dealing with ghosts and demigods and such, you're bound to run into a few scary moments here and there. Excuse me. But between the two, who was scarier? For Gozer, the scariest part of him was the Hell Dogs. And that was pretty much it. Sorry, but out of all the scary moments in the first film, the Hell Dogs were the only moments connected to Gozer that were legitimately frightening. Any others were from ghosts who were actually connected to Gozer. Vigo, on the other hand, most of the scarier moments in the sequel are in fact connected to Vigo, either through his minion Janosch or the slime that runs beneath the city. In fact, just roll some of that footage. So yeah, in the end, Vigo is easily the scarier villain of the two. So how do they stack up in the end? While we can all agree that the first movie is the superior film, I'm gonna have to say that Vigo the Carpathian is the better villain over Gozer the Gozerian. While both characters are memorable in their roles, Vigo just seems to be better overall. Granted, that doesn't mean he could take Gozer on in a full-on fight. In fact, I'm pretty sure if it came right down to it, Gozer could kick his ass pretty handily. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this special episode of Judge of Character. If you'd like to see more character combinations like this, then by all means, leave a comment, or you can leave a suggestion at my Twitter. In either case, I'm your host Steve, reminding all of you to stay in character, and I ain't afraid of no ghost. But I am afraid of Vigo, baby. Not again.